Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Ganis. I'm your host here for Design Paging Systems Design. I have with us our Senior Applications Engineer, John Lufik. He's going to be guiding us through this topic today.
Thank you, Joe. Very good. I have a few things. This is not going to be a long slideshow type event. I got a few things that we're going to cover here, but then we're going to really spend our time in software so that you have some usable tools to move forward with. So we'll recap a little bit of what we covered in yesterday's webinar. If you didn't catch that, that's certainly worth go back and review. If you're not signed up, get in touch with us. We'll figure out how to get you a copy of that. It will wind up on our YouTube page at some point. If for some reason you don't get a link to view it as an attendee. We're going to cover a topic called delay or not delay. So it goes right to one of the questions we had earlier. And then we're going to work on how to place some of these new loudspeaker models into ease, address, and focus, but really want to move toward spending time on Warehouse Designer to show you how to speed through this process. And it can be used on its own. It can be used to feed any other drafting process that you use to present a layout to an owner. And there's some resources and links. In this little slide deck, we will make a PDF copy of this and circulate this to you. So you'll have the links that are in this to go get the various things you may need. All right, so Biamp has compact, economical paging horns. Various models up to 60 watts, two-way. You got a few one-way reentrant horns there. And then we've had, on the R series community side of the business, we've had these larger format, basically full range music quality type speakers. Some of them exceptionally good at voice, some really good at the music side. So there's some variation in that theme. But a really big gap in the catalog between those, right? And functionally, not always the best answer, because some of these are fairly expensive from the point of view of a paging system, where the price of the item is really a commodity thing, right? But there's this market opportunity you're probably becoming aware of, that there are a tremendous number of warehouses and distribution centers going up around the world. We have seen, I guess you could call it an exponential growth, or certainly very rapid growth in the number of cases we've seen in the past 10 or 15 years. It used to be occasional, every couple months, few months, maybe once or twice a year, and now it's weekly. It's definitely very, very frequent that we see this sort of thing come up. Owners in industrial type spaces are using background music systems, not just for the soundscaping, but as motivational tools. So these are good reasons to present something other than the conventional squawking paging horn that we all know and don't love, right? So there's more options, and you might save them money. You certainly won't need as many devices using some of the things we're going to show you today. All right, so you can add a lot of value and deal with all kinds of corridor, aisle, industrial, public distribution type spaces, right? All kinds of places that look like this. So we introduced yesterday the R.153696, little compact speaker, three-way, moderately high output, but the real benefit here is that it's got the smooth response of one of its bigger brothers, the R.353896 that you probably already know. It's one of our most popular models, sort of a miniaturized version of that, built to be price competitive to the some of the larger paging horns. And inside, quite a lot of technology going on. And real quick, here's my little friend here is hanging out with me this week. And there's the unit. So not terribly big, easy to lift, even for this not so in shape individual holding it. So that's R15. And it sits right in there between paging horns and the full range R series style horns. And cost-wise, 25% more than the largest of the paging horns. So it's a very interesting value proposition there. It has something that actually has a little bass response and is very smooth through the voice band. CCA 80 is a totally different take on how to do sound distribution in large spaces that are kind of aisle-shaped or long corridors. And the main idea here was to reduce the number of speakers you need. And so instead of working at like a 3-to-1 rule for coverage, you're working actually at a 6-to-1 rule with single speakers. So at the minimum, you're cutting the number of speakers in half just because it's able to produce what we call an asymmetrical pattern, where it projects further at the top of the horn than the bottom and produces a more even result across a longer area. They can be doubled up into this bracket, back to back. I'll show you how to place that so it's precisely just like you see it in that picture when we get into the modeling. And here's a little look inside the under the hood of what that looks like. This triaxial system with a co-entrant 2-way driver for the mid and high, and then a woofer at the back of the low frequency horn. Again, quite a bit of technology in here, far more than you normally see in something we call a paging speaker. All right, so designing, I mentioned before, again, we're still kind of recapping yesterday that the prior state of the art to these products is that generally folks would see design recommendations like this with something very basic and prescriptive, line up all the speakers like little soldiers down the aisle and spread them out a certain dimension based on some little bit of trigonometry or something here. And that accomplishes a certain amount of coverage, but it completely ignores the polar pattern of the speaker, completely ignores where does the speaker's coverage begin and end for the listeners, where is the usable portion of it. So not always the best from that perspective. Also, every one of those little speakers needs a delay so that listeners along that path aren't confused by more than one arrival coming from different speakers. So that makes for a more sophisticated install to make that work right. That's expensive. Paging systems are supposed to be simple and affordable, right? So adding delays, sometimes unavoidable, sometimes essential. When we can avoid them, let's avoid them, right? Mainly for the cost. So here's an example of that. If you had 3 horns here all lined up in a row, you get really good coverage in between them, but then it drops off, and you can see that red line is an area that a CCA could actually cover. But this little array of horns won't work. You got to put in 2 or 3 more to get there. And so now you have 4 or 5 amp channels to cover this little area that's only 40 meters deep, not terribly large, right? CCA 80, that's the big guy. I'll make a terrible attempt to pick this up for you. There's the back panel and the front panel, the CCA 80. Get it in the camera, John. There we go. So built to be about the right size for one person to install. The bracket can be pre-installed, and both of them, by the way, this is a really nice new feature. See the little notch in the side of the yoke? So you hang up the bracket first and just slide the speaker with its fastening bolts into that little notch. So one device there that one person can put up with 1 amp channel, and we cover actually more than what like half a dozen or more of the conventional speakers we've covered in that same modeling environment. So I mentioned the 6-to-1 rule earlier. This is also just making life easy for you to figure out how to place and space them out. Even if you're just doing an AutoCAD-based layout, just how many do I need for this row or this aisle or this corridor? It's real simple math. You take the height that you want to place the speaker above the listening plane. So typically around 5.5 feet, 1.7 meters for standing adults. Whatever that distance is from there up to the speaker, and simply multiply it by 6. And that tells you exactly how much coverage you get out of each one and about how to space them out. Very straightforward method. There's a little side view of those dimensions and how to use them. right. So you'll notice here, mapping the voice band that from flag 1 to 3, it's nearly identical from 1,000 hertz and above. And even out at flag 4, it's a little further beyond what we are calling the prescribed coverage area. It's actually very close, just 2 or 3 dB away. So it's still very usable energy. Back to back, CCA 80D, where you have a dual set, comes with a free bracket to connect them and hang them up as a group. That I would not lift for you here today. I don't have a barbell to put it on. But anyway, 2 of them back to back. Now you've doubled your coverage area. You're still only using 1 channel of power and amplification. You might remember showing you that the connectivity is actually in the back panel, which is basically a little junction box, is a 2-sided Euro block. So you put your wire in one side and then the other side, and that's a parallel connection that's easy to link one speaker to another on a circuit. Okay. 3-to-1 rule I mentioned earlier, I'm going to go back over that. It's important. This is generically how we figure out rough in what is the useful projection distance and coverage area for any type of point source speaker. To do this, we have to, honestly, to do it well, put it in the modeling environment and adjust the tilt to an angle you think probably works, mark it with a flag, and then move another flag out to see where it's even. And now you can see roughly how much the coverage you're getting by comparing 2 frequency responses. This is one way to do it. It's my preferred way to do it because the other way is a little more mathematics, where I have to measure from the speaker to what is my first listener, tilt the speaker enough to get coverage to them, and then get out my little trig calculator and figure out how far to get to the next one. So the projection distance along that long axis there, that it's labeled 35, is 3 times the size of the short one. And so now you can see one way to do it. A little clunkier way to work, but that's been the way we've done it for a long time, not too strange. All right, so here's a little bit closer view of how it would work in modeling. All right, design tools. We had a lot of people say that they're using AutoCAD or some sort of drafting tool to lay out your systems. So we've got 2 files we're going to send to you. One's a DXF that's got 2 blocks, one original drawing and a block that you can use. Just scale that to the height of the trim height to listener height dimension, and move that around and place it on your drawing. And that's one way to work, and probably not a bad way to work for the CCA 80 at least. It's a very quick way to work. If you're a SketchUp user, we're also going to give you a SketchUp file, so you have this. Wouldn't be hard for you to figure this out on your own. Just thought it'd be convenient to have. All right, focus 3. Modeling system we use a lot, and we're going to come back around to how to get our speakers into this. It's a direct sound modeling environment, and in this world, we can place speakers however we want. We can rotate them in any direction and precisely aim them and add filters. We could do some fairly complicated things as needed to study the coverage for an area that really is a little more difficult. Or maybe we came up with something, a warehouse designer, we want to test that idea or modify it a little bit. It's a good work environment for that. It is a terribly slow place to work on systems where you have lots and lots of speakers, because you have to place every single one of them individually and label them and position them and then aim them and put another one. And you could spend hours rearranging a design and only get through a few iterations at best. So we're trying to get away from this. I think we actually, the main motivator for warehouse designer is we're tired of trying to do very large buildings with dozens and dozens or hundreds of speakers in this system. It's just not meant to do it. Yeah. But I will show you how to use it if that's one way you like to work. And the ease address, we have the RDOT 15 license for this. This is where we're going to place loudspeakers overhead in a distributed fashion, like a pendant or like a ceiling speaker. And there's lots of models that we license for EaseAddress, and you can put them in there and do a design like this. Now, there's cases for that. I think the primary case for doing it this way is when you want very specific control of zones. You want to be able to turn on a few speakers to an area, not turn on the others, or provide different messaging to different parts of the building. The other scenario that seems to drive this is if you have a site where you really don't know what's going to be under the speaker array. Could be different furniture, could be different equipment, could be different workstations, storage areas, aisles, whatever, and you just don't know, or it could change over time. You've been told by the owner to expect they're going to change their floor plan. Sometimes this is a smart way to go. It's more flexible to adjust with what the occupant does with their building. Anyway, we'll go over how to get your files in there to run EaseAddress. And lastly, Warehouse Designer, I've mentioned a couple times. Quite honestly, we could rename this like something else that also includes a lot of other environments that we work in that kind of look like warehouses, or just some things that have lots of aisles, like a parking garage, for example, or a shopping area, like a grocery store, right? You could certainly use this. Okay, so there's this program's totally different. In fact, it's not standalone software, it's a web application, which I'll show you how to use. And the way you work with it is not so much to draw the space and lay out the speakers, is you just give it the parameters, the dimensions of the space, and your priorities. And then it will generate solutions, and then you can modify them. All three programs generate a nice little PDF report at the end that gives you all the details, which is good for your client or others in your business who are going to take that and execute on it.